Okay. Okay, so hi, Kolby. I'm Kenna
Okay.
Griffin. I'm the Director of Programming and Engagement for All Counseling. I am here today with our CEO, Kolby Nance, and we're going to talk about a topic that is super important to Kolby, but just super important in therapy and mental health practice in general when you're trying to grow your practice, and that is referrals. So today we're going to talk about why referrals are important and how to get them. But first of all, give us your little pitch since you've been working on it and practicing it. What is all counseling all about for someone who's watching this video that doesn't know what we do?
Absolutely. Uh, all counseling's here for therapists. Where we are going is hopefully to create the best match between therapist and client, and we really care about the quality of care. We care about helping therapists get clients that are the best fitting or best fitting clients for them. It actually creates a win-win situation. Um, And so, yeah, we're here to facilitate and to hopefully improve a lot of industry inefficiencies that take place in this whole referral process that we're going to talk more about today. But all counseling is here to help therapists and clients alike connect with each other.
And that connection is so critical, right? Because we know that it leads to great outcomes on both sides for the mental health practitioner, but also for the help seeker.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that we do talk about when we talk about referrals and the importance of fitting people together and having people who maybe, your general practitioner really knows you and your needs, and they also know this therapist, right, that they can
Mhm.
connect you with. You have a big background in mental health. You've done a lot of things. So tell us a little bit about what you've done and how referrals became like such a critical, important thing for you moving forward and helping other people connect.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a little bit of my background. So I've been a licensed therapist for the last 6 years. I've been out of grad school, I guess, for the last 8. So if you include the practicum, I've almost got a decade under my belt of working on helping folks and being a provider. If I say we, that's because my wife is also a licensed counselor, and we owned a private practice in Central Florida before making our way back to Tennessee. And we started that just shy of COVID. So we started that in 2019. Um, Getting referrals is for sure something that every new therapist is going to know a whole lot about. They're going to care a whole lot about it, whether they know a lot about it or not. At that point, I didn't know a whole lot about it when I first started. I just knew that I needed them. That was I need referrals. If I'm going to build a career out of this, if I'm going to care for folks, if I'm going to employ my education that I just got, I need to receive referrals. And um, there's a mixture of different providers out there. Some that will want to go more of a community mental health center based or an agency based, and those are a large number of referrals. They're not so concerned because they're coming to them a far higher demand than they could ever see. Those that might join an existing practice will have a steady drip of general referrals, but still expected to generate some of their own direct referrals. And then those that are kind of self-starters and want to pioneer starting their own private practice, they're going to be very, very concerned about generating direct referrals for themselves. And so that was my experience. I tend to um, find myself in positions that I'm self-starting, and I enjoy that. It does give me energy. I like networking and getting out. I know that's not the case for everybody. I think that one hope that I have in today is just to kind of take the intimidation factor down a bit in that, and really kind of give some insights into what I learned when it was kind of on the job training and I didn't even know it. I was just kind of doing what I normally do, whether that's self-starting or networking, and just kind of what started to come up. And it's fun now that it translates, and that's what I'm trying to help therapists do all around. So Um, yeah, I really, when my wife and I started Porter's Sound, which is the practice name in Central Florida, it was in a community that didn't have a whole lot of counseling resources. It was a growing community, not a very large community, roughly a population size of about 200,000 people, so not a major city or anything like that. Really kind of a little big town, big little town, whichever way you want to go. Um, and so I think that context even matters. How much you have to differentiate yourself, or how much you need to teach other people what the role of counseling is in a community. You face different challenges in the different size city and what context you're in. But we built a practice really quickly. She had a 4-month wait list, I think, within her first 4 months. I mean, she was just in high demand. It took me roughly 4 to 6 months to build up to a full-time caseload. And then thereafter, I had anywhere from a 3 to 4 month wait list. And so we were able to bring on 7 additional therapists, and we kind of developed this model where there wasn't a lot of therapists wanting to move to Lakeland, Florida, which is where we were, but there were neighboring cities where within an hour commute, folks could come in within a day. And so we had generated enough referrals to where 7 or 8 therapists could come in on a part-time basis. And that's kind of the model that we stuck with. And it was a lot of fun to bring a service to a community that didn't really have that resource before. And yeah, I'm happy to dive more into that. I think that's what we're about to do over the next little bit.
So in marketing, we say like word of mouth, right? Word of mouth is the best marketing. Word of mouth is the best advertising. You've heard that. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? When we're talking about referrals, is other people promoting your business for you.
Absolutely.
Other people referring patients to you. I think, or at least I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you talk about being in this smaller community that doesn't have counseling services before you got there, and thinking, oh my gosh, the need is so great. And it seems like there are so many therapists. Like, why is this even necessary to have referrals? Shouldn't people just be flocking to everyone's private practice because they need so much help?
Yeah, absolutely. Depends if they know where to go, or the big part in this industry is who you trust. And that's I would almost say you're right. Word of mouth is the best marketing, and then I would almost go a step further. This is not the case anymore. There's been so much investment and so much progress made in digital marketing, and obviously we're trying to make headway in that at all counseling, but for the mental health industry, for the behavioral health industry. But historically, I mean, word of mouth is exclusively the marketing, and that's because you're fighting centuries of shame stigma that's around the industry, um, and simultaneously it does two things. Not only does it say who's available and who should I go to, but the other side is it vets the care providers to distinguish who's quality care and who isn't. That's a big way that word of mouth has led the way as far as like who would be seen. Now, different than I would say maybe any other industry, and it's probably a stretch. You can correct me here. You find the one that I'm talking about. But even if I'm going to have heart surgery, I don't care if my heart surgeon is a jerk. I just care that he can operate on my heart, or she can operate on my heart. If I'm going to, I care about competency. And yet this is in a work where not only do you need competency, but you need deep empathetic care. You want warmth. This is a personal work, in providing care that exceeds a lot of the more objective, and even in service industry. So word of mouth typically comes from a trusted source, a trusted friend, a trusted doctor, a pastor, a number of different referral sources that there's some developed sense of trust. And so Yeah, word of mouth, incredibly powerful. I would say almost as exclusively led the way in the context of therapy and counseling, and that is what's generating referrals.
That is fascinating. Okay. I've never thought of it that way, but you're right. Like some years ago, I had a knee surgery. My general practitioner, I think, is the one who recommended who should do my
Mhm.
knee surgery. So I trust him, obviously. And that's probably your closest relationship to a physician, right? As your
Right.
GP. Uh,
Yep.
but I didn't care if the doctor who did my knee surgery was like nice or if I
Yeah.
liked him. I just
Right.
wanted him to not mess up my knee.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You didn't go in there with, I'm hoping I connect with him.
Right.
Like,
Didn't even really talk to him, I don't think much,
right.
maybe some kind of pre-surgery consult, and then for seconds before I was under that day.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yep.
that's true. So it's probably really your general practitioner, your therapist, right? Are the people who you want, and your therapist even more so, because like you said, it's not like you have a sore throat. You're
Yeah.
telling them things that are really maybe even,
Vulnerable.
and yeah,
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. It taps into that core human need of like, if I'm really known, am I loved? And Um, we're constantly, this is where I don't want to really dip down this side in this context, but we're constantly trying that out. We're constantly testing that in other avenues. That's why, disclosure to a close friend, disclosure to a doctor, a family member, if that person says the name of a professional that was welcoming, kind, empathetic, warm, listened, and they trusted, then that's going to go leagues further. I mean, I can't even stress the degree of how much more buy-in a client will have that this person that I trust said that this is a quality person to work with. So, and there's little tests. Yeah, go ahead.
So let's say I'm just starting my practice, or maybe I've been in it for a while and I just don't have the referrals that I need, or I just don't have the numbers that I need as far as my client load. Where do these usually come from? How am I going to find them?
Absolutely. I think that is the scary factor of anyone wanting to start the endeavor of going out on their own. And there is a felt sense of like, even if you've been in practice for a while and there's been some dependability on, about this average number of sessions I'm seeing per week, that there's always this felt sense of like, oh my gosh, what if in 2 weeks to just, it runs dry. There's nobody that wants to come back. I mean, the number of colleagues that I've talked to and friends who are in private practice, that's always a felt sense. But for those that take the risk or they're at the beginning of their career, the demand is there. I think the thing that works against you the most is that fear, to be honest, because it brings on all sorts of performance anxiety. It maneuvers the client counselor relationship to where a counselor is giving up a whole lot of their um, I would just say like natural, maybe there's a better word for it than that. It's just not coming to mind right now. Authority that takes place when somebody comes in the room. And I don't think you want to get in this position where it's like, I'm just trying to make you happy and to the client. I mean, you want to care for them well. And so, um, yeah, if I were coaching somebody that's early in their career or they're considering to go out on their own, I would say, what you're wanting to build is much more along the lines of what a marathon, what it would be like to run a marathon instead of a sprint or even a 5K. Like you're wanting to build longevity here. And the way that you're going to do that is through consistency and um, having blocked out time in your schedule to make room for networking or referrals. I think very few come up with a budget to begin with of like, hey, roughly, this is how much I'm wanting to spend on marketing. There's going to be so many expenses that come your way and just upkeeping and maintaining licensure and notes that you won't be thinking about proactively pushing out into the community. And that could be something as small as like $30 a month, $50 a month. Let me think about how much I'm allocating towards this, not only on developing online listings. Yes, put yourself out there. Those ways you can find, but also, hey, this is for coffee. And I'm going to identify two people over this month that I think are in other people's lives, and I'm going to ask if they could go to coffee. And I would say close proximity touch points, like in person. If somebody is not willing to do in person, do a phone call where they hear your voice. Do instead of just text or instead of just email. If you could get beyond that to do a Zoom call, that's better. Anything that adds close proximity to a referral source, do it, because whether that referral source knows it coming into the context or not, and then to the meeting, they are going to be reading you as a care provider of like, this must be what it feels like to sit with them. Now, you're not trying to be their counselor. You don't need to show off your skills. You don't need to, I would encourage people actually don't even make it a sales pitch. It's just informative. Yeah, I moved here a couple of years ago. I really care about people. I'm licensed in the state of Tennessee, and just if there's anybody that I could help, I'd be happy to be a referral source for you. I mean, just saying, kind of giving them an update, and really what they're going to do is like just connect with them. Just be curious about how they found themselves in their profession, what their week to week is like. Do they do they send anybody to counseling, things like that, and sources that would be helpful in that. Doctors, pastors, HR personnel is actually really, I mean, there's always somebody within the workplace that other folks come to. A big one that people miss out on are other counselors in their community. A lot of times we just see them as competitors. I would encourage you sign up for all of the local professional associations, but then also just like ask a counselor out to coffee and ask what it's been like and see what their area of specialty is, what they're interested in, what you enjoy working with, who you enjoy working with, and if they have anybody that they can think of that comes across they don't have time for or whatever it might be. So I would say don't limit yourself. When I got started, um, uh, I was just open to meet. I would try to meet with two people a week. And I think that that's pretty aggressive. I would even tell somebody like start with two people a month, but just have it as part almost as if it's a session. Like block off a time in the calendar that this is, and that'll kind of give you that training that will build more of that marathon endurance, more of that career long endurance than, I need to just find the most clients as quick as I possibly can. It takes a little time, but it'll pay off.
Forgive me if you've heard this story because I think that you may have, but I launched a blog. Oh gosh, that's probably been 2 decades ago now. And I was so excited. I thought I had this incredible idea and I could see the need for the information. I was at a conference. This is how excited about it I was. I went up to my hotel room that night instead of going to like mixers and stuff and launched this blog. And I wrote this post that was just cringy when I looked back on it. But I just kept like refreshing to check to see who had visited, because I just knew that it was going to hit big, right? Because it was important. And I knew that there was this need there. And I think like my mom read it and maybe one other, maybe, my spouse.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good lesson. And just because there's a need doesn't mean you don't still have to do the work to help people to find you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's still in existence. It's relatively popular today, I'm happy to say. But the same thing is true. I had to get out there, whether that was at conferences or meeting people or talking about it when I was presenting places, sharing about it on social media. Um, and I can see how, as a counselor, you would go, I know that people need this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
reading all about how there's this shortage, of mental health professionals, and there's such a great need. Where is everybody? And just
Mm-hmm.
setting aside, like you said, that it doesn't have to be a huge amount of budget, but just thinking about how am I going to pay for coffee with two people every month?
Hmm.
How am I going to pay for my professional association? Is great advice, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, even think, if you're in a major city that's really saturated, I would almost say like also pick a town that's 30 miles away, that's a neighboring town that it kind of feels like, man, that would really be inconvenient to have to drive that 45 minutes to get over to this town. And I would start like just by reaching out and networking. Hey, I'm in town. I care about working with a few touch points in that neighboring town. And I think you'd be really surprised at um, it just the little resources that those folks feel like they have besides just saying like I searched for therapists in the larger city, and so I just send people that personal touch point will mean so much to them. So and normally that opens up for virtual. It's not like you have to keep driving back out there or anything like that. Once again, it's all about, does that referral source say your name when they're talking with somebody?
I was speaking with one of our all counseling community members the other day about marketing. He has just graduated, just really started working. And we were talking about his niche and how his website sort of said, I can treat all of these things, right?
Mhm.
Like, okay, let's hone in. Like, who's your ideal client? Um, he had a background in religious studies, sounds familiar,
Mhm.
right? And really was interested in seeing young people, really felt like that was where he could make the most difference. Um,
Mhm.
my immediate response was, you have to connect with youth pastors.
Yeah, right.
Why didn't I think of that? But it's hard because I think people are afraid to identify the ideal client or the
Hmm.
expertise because they don't want to turn away these other people who they might potentially see, especially when they're getting started, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that word of advice right there of just like, yeah, working backwards from and it would help to the person you saw gauging their level of burnout and their sustainability. If they're working with more of the people that they feel passionate about or more in their wheelhouse, it reduces the amount of time that they have to do a whole new study on learning something else that's outside of their area of focus. And so there is this value of where you're investing your time too, of like, yeah, target youth pastors, target guidance counselors at school, target parent associations. I mean, things that just like, these are the people that are going to look to other people to talk about who to go see, and you want your name to come up. And I would just, I think this is to go back and emphasize something we said to begin with, this is a very personal work. And so trust goes a long way. You want them to say your name. Um, a lot of marketing can help put you out there, but if you do the legwork of networking, it's going to mean that much more. So,
Really. Right. We talk a lot in marketing too about especially with social media, because there are so many options and so many places that you can show up and spend a lot of time. It's like, think about where your ideal client already is. Uh,
yes.
and
Yeah.
that's what I think I hear you saying with referrals too. Think about who's already connected to the people
Hmm.
you want to serve and how
That's
you
right.
can have rich conversations with them. Um, so how do I get more of these? Now I know I got to have them, right?
Yeah.
How am I going to get them?
Yeah. Show up, be consistent. Remember, it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Um, Taper expectations. I mean, I think that was my biggest thing of like, um, golly, this sounds so off topic, but I don't think I learned about this is outside of therapy. I don't think I learned about compound interest or the way anything like that worked until well after high school. I don't know that I knew about that in high school. And because of word of mouth still leading the way in counseling, there is a real sense of like the number of people you work with, the more you work with, the more that are going to talk about your services. Um, I would just deeply encourage people like take a deep breath, um, give yourself as you are, not this pressurized and performance anxiety driven self out there to people, and kind of trust the process that there are people who will connect well with you. The more you see, the more they're going to talk, and continue to put yourself out there outside of just the counseling room. It will grow more and more referrals. Take advantage of the places, if you want to identify them as more thin versus those thick engagement places, like sitting down with somebody for coffee, of where you can identify allcounseling.com. Let me make sure that I'm doing the work, that this is going to stand out there for everybody to see. Let me get that out of the way. Let me sit down and sign up for that, as many of those as possible, not just a plug for our site, obviously, but where are the other ones that will have me listed, so that I'm coming up in searches, so that all of that is taking place. And then how over the long term can I keep consistent with taking people out, being face to face. And once again, you don't have to sell yourself. You don't have to make it compelling. I would say just go to show up and connect. You might not treat it as if you will probably not get a referral from this person. I mean, just a natural conversation, and they will feel a level of comfort of like, oh, well, they treated me with respect. They wanted to get to know me, um, be on time, communicate well, all of those things. Like, those are just the givens that will kind of help foster more referrals coming in.
So let's talk about the mistakes. What
Mhm.
mistakes you've shared a few, and thank you for doing that, that you made early on. I think it's
Mhm.
important when we're in positions or leadership or education, that we can talk about how we screwed up along the way to help other
Yes,
people learn from our mistakes and hopefully not repeat them. But what are some common things you see that therapists do that really harm the referral process or keep them from getting them?
absolutely. As far as, yeah, like mistakes that are made, or harmful, kind of, it ends up damaging the referral relationship, um, is where it comes across too pushy, or like, um, I would say the one key marker is you have to be able to very professionally, tastefully take off the therapist hat. So you don't need to show up everywhere becoming everyone's therapist. You don't need to become the referral sources therapist, like, hey, how's it going? Good. No, 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 no. How are you really? You don't need to do this, like, spelunking for what are the deepest caverns of their soul in that moment. Like, it's going to go really poorly. Don't treat them like a client, treat them like a human being, and tell them about what you're passionate about and what you want to do. Um, I think there were times that I felt this sense of like, man, I want to live up to what their hopes or expectations are of me. So I better be insightful, or I better, um, sound beyond my years and wisdom, or something like that. And I don't think you have to do that. Looking back, I wish I wouldn't have catered as much to certain people's needs, or I wish that I would have just kind of vulnerably put myself out there as a professional of, this is what I enjoy doing. This is who I am. This is where I'm doing it. And um, professionalism around that. I think key mistakes that I see in the industry is people don't communicate timely in therapy. I was in a business role, working for my father's company prior to, and I knew that it really mattered, that 24 hours of getting back to somebody. Um, I think far too often it's just this expectation, like, I can just, it's flexible. You can't ever depend on, when it's, if somebody's going to start talking towards the end of a session, and then that just spills over into the way that you relate. Like, I can show up 5 to 10 minutes late for this meeting with a referral source, and that's already setting an expectation of, well, that's probably how they're going to treat somebody who comes in to see them. I don't, and so I would just be punctual, be timely, be respectful. Ask them if there's anything that if it's an appropriate setting that you could provide some um, services that would be like a seminar, a workshop, or something along those lines. Like that's a great way to build referral. And I spoke at a few graduate level classes after I'd gotten my license, just telling them about what it was like to be a new practitioner in the community. Um, it was incredible how many referrals came out of that. It just and that was simply me saying like, yeah, I'll be available to kind of give these students insight as to like what it's like to get your legs under you as a new therapist. And so don't be salesy. Don't try to be other people's therapist. Those are some key, like, yeah, don't do those. Be professional and timely. And really just go to connect with another human being. Don't overdo it. I think that built such trust. Like people are kind of nervous when they sit down with the therapist anyway, of their they can be at least. And so uh might feel like I don't know where conversation's going to go, or I don't know if I'm going to say something that indicates are they reading me, and just relate to them like another human. That's kind of the advice I would give.
Tell me about that. When you find out a client has referred you to
Yeah.
how's
Yeah.
what's
Like
that
a previous client of mine has referred somebody else.
like?
I'll typically ask, I'll do a screening call and I will ask, hey, if you don't mind me asking, how did you hear about me, or how did we get in touch? And if they say, oh, it was a previous client of yours, um, you know, uphold ethics, uphold all of the confidentiality that you've agreed to by the HIPAA laws. And I'll normally say like, that's a really high compliment, or like, it's always kind to hear that somebody I previously worked with has referred, or is something that does not allude to any like, oh yeah, I know them. And you don't want to go into any of that. In fact, it's illegal and unethical to go into that, but just saying what an honor that somebody would send you my way. You know, I, a handwritten note will go a really long way. And once again, upholding all ethical and legal requirements in that. Typically in my intake paperwork, I will ask, like, is it okay if we reach out to the referral source just to express thanks for sending, and give them a yes, no agreement to that. And so um, folks handle that different ways. I think states will indicate, as far as there might be some variety in that. And but just a touch point back to the referral source to tell them thank you. What that could be an email, that could be a handwritten note. Once again, the more involved, the more personal that's going to be. I think the more meaningful that is. So
Do you
I don't know
still
if that
do
answers
that?
the question.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Do you still do that now that you have a busy client load and you have your big
Um,
business?
it 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 depends. It's probably it might be a part two series of I think if somebody wants to grow a practice, part of the difficulty and is growing beyond your own name or reputation in therapy. And so if you've developed a practice, how well you communicate to the referral sources in the community that there are additional therapists that you really trust. And so if people are referring based on my name, but they might work with a different staff counselor that we have, I still would want to write that note. I would still want to send that email, and I would really want to communicate all the players at that table. So like, hey, thank you so much. We were able to get them connected with Anthony, and Anthony, let me tell you a little bit about him. That way they know Kolby's not my only available resource. Anthony is also, or like Sarah, she was a much better fit for this demographic. And like, so still trying to have that personal touch note, but also like bringing your team in with it. But that's kind of that might be a part two because it's getting into how you grow a group practice at that point. But yes is the short answer.
So we've talked about on our site before referral letters and different types of letters that you could write to physicians, youth pastors, some of these people that we've talked about. Are those
Mhm.
helpful?
Uh, I think they are. I do. I think the more personal it is and the more they back up a personal interaction, the more helpful it's going to be. Is probably the short and like have follow through of like um yeah, thank you letters. I mean, I think you could write letters that are informative and let somebody know that you're here. Um, those are great. It's not going to, but having some sort of update or something like that is also going to be helpful. Just touch points. You don't want to overwhelm anybody, obviously, but if they can follow a personal interaction that they have a memory of, that's the best.
I think that's a great idea, like introducing yourself to the community or whatever. And then maybe a couple weeks later, you can start scheduling those coffees or whatever,
Yeah,
your phone call or, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So how can we help? How can all counseling help people who need referrals?
Absolutely. One, you can get on allcounseling.com, claim a profile. That'll get you connected and it'll give you a digital footprint to let people know that you're there as they search our site or they even just search the web for available counselors. Um, if you want to be more involved, our premium subscribers or group subscriptions, they're going to get a layer deeper in that'll have some of our new features that are coming out, where we're partnering with organizations and kind of helping vet care and filter referrals to those who are available. So um, those would be some ways to get connected with us. I think there's some other places that obviously as a new therapist, you want to be as visible as possible, as known as possible. Some of these difficulties of becoming known to these referral sources is what I care about helping our community do, is helping them when they have low margins or helping them in areas they don't feel like they're competent in and getting them out in front of people. So signing up on that, scheduling a marketing consultation call, scheduling a coaching consultation call. We can get to know your specific challenges and specific areas that you're in and hopefully help you grow in those contexts.
Those are really fun, I think. They're fun for me to do because we get to meet
Yeah, I agree.
people at all different places in their businesses and um, like you said, try to help them through what we know and mistakes that we've made. Okay, what else? What did I forget to ask you that we need to make sure we touch on?
I think you've covered it. A lot of it is swallowing the lump in your throat and getting out there. And I feel for, I've been there, it's nerve-wracking enough to sit down in front of your first client and just like, oh my gosh, can I help them? Do I know anything more than what they know? I mean, all of these things that therapists will face in the room. And then when you go to, oh, I'm going to go and kind of vulnerably offer that I have something I think that will help this community, or that there's going to be people that seem like they're just like you. They treat the same specialties, or they care about the same focus areas, whatever that might be. I would say don't let that slow you down. Just be consistent with it. Find touch points. Um, I think a huge one, everybody always laughs at me in this, is I would barbershops, hair salons, like these like folks like offer to do like how do you respond? Offer to do a workshop, a little one day a luncheon for them, bring in coffees for everybody and say like, what do you do when somebody discloses a trauma story to you? And just give them like, if you ever had anybody talk to you about this, another one, CrossFit gyms, like high sense of community, high sense of centralized point that is good. Like people are going to trust to open up a little bit with, and then whose name that person says matters. And just scheduling a coffee, seeing if they'd be willing to talk. You're going to get 9 no's for every 1 yes. That's okay. That's part of the name of the game. So I think we've covered all that. It's just there are stay consistent, put yourself out there is what I would tell folks.
So in the beginning, we've been writing a lot. You've been writing a lot on the blog about making money as a therapist and making money through some of these side things. But when you're talking about going and speaking to a class, or you're talking about doing a coffee for the local barbershop or whatever, at that
Mhm.
point, you're not asking them to pay you for those things, or you are.
No, not initially. I think if you're really trying to like just get your name out there, I would offer those. I would actually coach somebody to be prepared at what your cost of that would be. Like, hey, I charge $250 to come in and do this luncheon of um, how to give an adequate first response to a story that you feel overwhelmed by. Like, um, and having a cost there that says like, but you know what, I'm new here in town. I'm wanting to get my name out there. I think that this would be a um, really good touch point for your people. I'd be willing to put this on for you for free if there's a time that would work well for you. That way that they kind of capture this concept of like, well, this is how much it'd be worth, and we get this as a marketing piece for them that they want to come and do this for free at no cost. And so I'd have an idea of what you think it's worth. Then I would say, I'm offering to do this for 3 or 4 organizations around town that are like-minded, and um, go that route.
Yeah. So the good news is that the fear that you were talking about in the beginning of starting any business, really, but this one
Uh-huh.
as well, it's maybe going to dissipate over time, at least some.
Yeah,
And you'll have to do less of these, free consultations and things like that as you begin to fill up. And then you'll still have to do some of it though, right? Because you want to keep people coming in the door.
that's right. Yep. That's right. And eventually it does. Like when you've seen enough people and showing up to offer our genuine, authentic care, they will, begin to tell friends, family. And so like you do less of it. It is still nerve-wracking, still put yourself out there. But yes, a little bit less after that beginning. There'll be certain hours where you're like, what should I do with myself at the beginning? And so trying to find, brainstorming where are those places. It's a good way to spend time.
Absolutely. This has been really good. Lots of great
Thanks,
information.
Kenna.
Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure.